Welcome to The Explainer. So let's just dive right into it, because today we are exploring what is absolutely the most intimate, yet kinda invisible, everyday experience we all share. I'm talking about thinking. It's something we literally do constantly, right? From the second we wake up to the moment we finally fall asleep. The word thinking feels so immediate, so obvious that it almost completely resists being examined. But today, we're going to systematically deconstruct the whole shebang. We're going to look at the invisible architecture of your very own mind.
Okay, to start us off, I actually want you to do something with me. Just close your eyes for a quick second. Seriously, try it. Now, notice what's happening right now in your head. The words you're hearing, the little images flashing by. Now ask yourself, where is that actually happening? For almost all of us, there's this deeply assumed default setting that thinking is a private, bounded activity located right there, directly inside your brain. It feels like a specific, contained little space that belongs to you and you alone.
And you know what's really fascinating about this sense of location? It comes with this quiet certainty. This feeling isn't something we arrive at through heavy, deliberate reasoning. You didn't, logic your way into feeling like your thoughts live inside your head. It simply presents itself as an ongoing condition. It's just a space where ideas magically appear, where they're examined, and where they unfold. This is the familiar shape of thought, and it's reinforced by our experience every single day.
Section 1. The inner voice, the medium of thought.
For the vast majority of us, thinking isn't just some vague, abstract internal feeling. It's explicitly verbal. It's a running verbal stream that narrates our lives, evaluates our choices, rehearses arguments we're going to have later, and plans our days in a tone that feels distinctly personal. In a very real sense, it makes the movement of thought feel absolutely identical to the movement of language itself.
And hey, this isn't exactly a brand new observation either. Let's ground this all the way back in the 17th century with the philosopher Thomas Hobbes. He actually referred to reasoning as a kind of mental discourse. The absolutely crucial point here is his brilliant metaphor. Thinking is simply a conversation, but the speaker and the listener just happen to be the exact same person. One internal statement naturally leads to the next. This reliance on words runs incredibly deep. Take a look at this observation from cognitive scientist Steven Pinker. He points out that because we rely so heavily on language to communicate, we actually really struggle to even conceive of thinking without words. And there's a fun little irony here, isn't there? I mean, we are literally using our own inner voices right now to analyze the concept of the inner voice. That is how dominant this experience is. It just seems to define the entire process of cognition. But this intense identification between thought and language shapes our expectations in a very specific, kind of sneaky way. We often operate under the assumption that if an idea can't be perfectly articulated, it somehow lacks clarity, or maybe it hasn't been fully thought yet. The act of putting something into words feels like the act of completing it. So, when we can't find the right words, we just assume our thinking is flawed. We rarely stop to consider that, hey, maybe we're just experiencing a completely different, non-verbal kind of cognition.
Section 2. Sequence and control, the chain of thought.
So, alongside language, our thoughts really appear to follow this ordered, sequential progression. This beautifully aligns with Daniel Kahneman's famous concept of System 2 thinking. Think about when you're actively trying to solve a tough problem. It feels deliberate, right? It feels effortful. It feels like a step-by-step process where you're moving logically from a premise to an evaluation and finally landing safely on a conclusion. One idea forms a sturdy chain link directly to the next one.
And this specific combination of sequence and control creates a tremendously powerful feeling of agency for us. We don't feel like thinking is just something that magically happens to us. We feel like we're the ones out there directing traffic. We honestly believe we can intentionally intervene, reconsider a premise, or shift our focus entirely. Even when a totally random thought pops into our head uninvited, we feel we have the power to just grab hold of it and steer it in a new direction. After all, if thinking is verbal, sequential, and controlled, well, it feels like there has to be an implicit I running the whole show.
Which brings us to Section 3, the thinking self, the I behind the curtain.
Now, I bet you recognize this one. René Descartes' incredibly famous cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Descartes argued that the act of thinking wasn't just some neat feature of who we are, but literally our defining characteristic. He viewed the self as a thinking thing, existing in a private, enclosed domain entirely separate from the physical body. This really shows you just how historically ingrained this idea of the self as the ultimate architect of thought really is.
Building right on top of that, a few decades later, John Locke added his own perspective to the mix. He described consciousness as perceiving what passes in one's own mind. For Locke, the mind is literally furnished with ideas through experience. And this contributed heavily to the incredibly durable image we still hold on to today. The mind is a private, interior room populated by thoughts and observed by a distinct witness. And that witness is you.
So let's just step back for a second and look at this box we've built. Let's see how this all snaps together into a unified model. Basically, we view thinking as internal, verbal, sequential, controlled, and firmly anchored in a self. And you know what? This is a highly coherent, really persuasive model. It completely aligns with our daily experience, it firmly supports our sense of identity, and it gives us a clear framework for understanding responsibility and decision-making. It is the invisible box we all live inside every single day.
Now we're making a pivot. Section 4, Seeing the Model, the Paradigm Shift. The goal of this explainer is absolutely not to sit here and tell you the model we just built is wrong. Not at all. The goal is simply to step back and observe it from the outside. Notice the separation this forces us to make. On one hand, you have the raw experience, words moving internally, ideas naturally unfolding. That experience is 100% real and remains completely intact. But on the other hand, you have the interpretation, the model we literally just built. By naming the components of this model, we're creating a little bit of breathing room, a little distance. We start to realize that the way we interpret the experience of thinking is actually an inherited framework. We're finally separating the reality from the model.
And honestly, that distinction is vital. Because while this familiar model is beautifully elegant and organizes our everyday experience so naturally, we have to remember something crucial. Coherence is not the exact same thing as exhaustiveness. Just because a model fits perfectly with what we consciously notice does not mean it accounts for absolutely everything that's happening beneath the surface of our cognition.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering question. Is this model actually complete? Are thinking, mind, and self just unexamined givens, or are they just one specific way of describing a much larger, way more mysterious process? I really encourage you to take this question with you today. Patiently observe your own internal model. Notice where it holds up beautifully, and perhaps notice where it begins to show its limits. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer into the architecture of your own mind. Keep asking questions and keep exploring.
Thank you for watching. If something in this resonated with you, then you're already closer than you think. If you're ready to go deeper, there's a link below to my book, Before Thought: How the Mind Constructs Reality Before You Know It. This isn't theory, it's a framework you can actually use. Tap the link below and step into it.